Hello, and welcome to the Social Psychic Radio Show featuring Jason Zook. In uncertain times, we must change our focus and priorities. This show will highlight social justice issues with the goal of expanding minds and increasing unity, love, and mutual respect for ourselves and our planet. We support the Black Lives Matter movement. Our show aspires to promote social spirituality, which simply means that by coming together, we can solve any of our problems, including the goal of bringing an end to all forms of hate, discrimination, bias, or oppression. We must protect our environment, reform our criminal justice system, and protect every citizen from police brutality. When we come together, it becomes possible to bridge the gaps that plague our society and divide us from within. We the people means everyone.
Hello and welcome to the Social Psychic Radio Show. This is Jason Zook. It's a great pleasure that I bring Jackie Lapin on the show as our special guest to discuss her background and to talk about SpeakerTunity, as well as her amazing books that she's authored in the area of a new age movement. And I'm very excited about having Jackie on the show to share her insight with our guests. Welcome to the show, Jackie.
I'm delighted to be here, Jason. Thank you for the invitation.
I appreciate it. And just for full disclosure to our audience, I've had the benefit of being acquainted with conscious media relations for about 2 or 3 years through my podcast. And what I want to say on the side is you guys have amazing speakers and people who come on as special guests. I want to ask you about your personal journey, because that's always something that intrigues me. How did you start in this area, and what motivated you to pursue spirituality and I'd say the law of attraction and higher consciousness and those kind of things as your forte?
Well, I say the people that we serve are those people who improve one's life, one's business, or the planet. And that could be in any different way. You know, it could be spirituality, personal growth, etc. But how I started was, you have to go back to the point when I was 11 years old, or maybe it was when I was 4. When my dad got cancer when I was 4 years old, and he struggled financially. Fortunately, he survived. But we were financially really wiped out. So he wanted to move the family to another area. And he moved us to a place that I was considered an outsider. And you know what happens when you're a kid and you're an outsider? Nobody wants to play with you. So I was all alone during my childhood, and really spent a lot of time, inside myself and my world. But the things that I loved were the Los Angeles Dodgers and writing. And so at 11 years old, I said, you know what? I'm going to put my 2 favorite things together, and I'm going to be a sports writer. Now, Jason, there were no women sports writers in my era. There were none. And, but for me, I had a vision. I mean, it was the first time that I was really consciously creating. And so I saw this, I knew this was what I was going to do. I started to read the LA Times. And at 20, I was at the Detroit Free Press. At 21, I was at the Associated Press and on the front page of the Los Angeles Times. And 22, I was at the Washington Post. And actually, I was there the night Nixon resigned.
Wow.
And so from there, I went on to have one of the largest sports special events in cable TV PR agencies in America. And I've always had a curiosity and an interest in the esoteric arts. Astrological chart is really different and points to everything that I've done in my life. And I had a psychic that was always sort of floating around in my life. And now I have dozens of them. But at the time, I built this big agency. I started what became one of the 2 largest sports special events and cable PR agencies in America. You would know my client list. It was things like Toyota Motorsports and the Golf Channel and Showtime and Top Rank Boxing and the World Poker Tour. The last thing I did was launch the World Poker Tour and the whole poker phenomenon. And so, I played in a big sandbox for a long, long time. And then I wrote my 2 books. And I have to say I was called to it. I had started to read a lot of the leading spiritual lights in the world. Your Wayne Dyers, Louise Hayes, and and Esther and Jerry Hicks, and I mean, all of the great luminaries. And I saw, and this was before The Secret came out, I saw this thread that people weren't talking about, that it was clear to me that our thoughts and our emotions really impact our future, and how we vibrate is how we live. So I sat down to write a book called The Art of Conscious Creation: How You Can Transform the World. And it did really well. And it came out right about the time The Secret did. And I had endorsements from Joe Vitale and Mark Victor Hansen. And by the time I wrote the second book, which had an endorsement from Marie Diamond, who was in The Secret, and Peggy McCall, that book was the best spiritual book of the year at the International New Age Trade Show. And when I wrote that book, and I finally realized that the PR biz had changed entirely. The media was getting smaller. It was harder to get things. It was going to social media. It wasn't where I wanted to play. But I really wanted to serve the people of the world who were making it a better place. They were like me. I had an affinity for them. I cared about them. And so that's when I shifted and I rebranded the agency to Conscious Media Relations. And so for the last 12 years, we've been doing, as you know, radio podcast tours. We introduce authors and leaders to 9,000 radio shows and podcasts at the same time. I'm sorry to tell you, you are one of 9,000. And we guarantee a minimum of 30 interviews. And so that's where I really found my home. That was where I was really, we've done this for 200 people at this point, and that to me is joyous. We love doing that work. And then, and of course, one of the nice things about it is, I would say a third of our client base are people who with intuitive skills, something along the line, that is extrasensory beyond, what the tradition is. And that could be just healing, some aspect of healing. And it might be, they've created a new form, or they've risen to the leadership in a particular form of healing, whatever it might be. So about 5 years ago, some of them kept saying to me, well, can you book me on speaking engagements? Can you book me on speaking engagements? I said, no. But I heard it enough time that I slapped myself upside the head and said, the universe is trying to tell you something. You aren't listening. And I realized that it wasn't that I wanted to book them, but I knew where all these opportunities were. Why don't I just tell them? And so that's how SpeakerTunity was born. And SpeakerTunity is a speaker and leader resource company. And what we do is provide leaders, and of all stripes, not just in the intuitive gifts, anybody in business and entrepreneurs, coaches, whatever, with places where they can book themselves. Now, that includes virtual and live speaking events and radio shows and podcasts, business podcasts, TEDx's, virtual summits, virtual giveaways, online giveaways that are looking for partners, just about any place that you can present yourself with, gain your visibility so you can get in front of your ideal client. Our client base is anybody that needs to get in front of an audience to grow a business. And so now we don't give you the mega conferences, not at this time, but what we do give you are meetings, venues, and associations that are hungry and always looking for speakers. Right. And for example, we've identified in 60 different markets, we have identified up to 2,000 speaker leads in their own markets in 4 categories: business, subdivided into 55 industries, ethnicities, and gender. So you just want women's meetings, or real estate people, or entrepreneurs, or teachers, we have it all. And then the service groups, your Rotaries, your Optimists, and then all the places you talk to the consumer directly, whether that's moms groups or health and wellness support groups, or seniors, or parenting, or military, or LGBT, or, anything, any other special interest groups, bookstores, libraries, and hospitals. And then lastly, spiritual unity, centers for spiritual living, faith groups, and consciousness groups. Because if you're a speaker, you want to cover, and you have something that can cover any one of those areas, you really want to dive into that marketplace and really get yourself known. Now, in this world today, that could be virtual stages. It could be coming back to live stages. But we want to just make sure that you know who to contact and how to contact them, and what their phone number and what their email is, so that we save you all the time to find it yourself. That's it. That's it. We're making life easier for speakers and leaders. We now give them the tools and the training for it as well. Like, for example, if you want your speaker one sheet or your podcast introductory sheet, we will design those for you. If you want training programs on how to get booked, we got that too. So we're just trying to make your life easier.
You make my life easier because as a podcast host, I get pitches from you guys and I have these amazing guests that are prepackaged. It makes it such an amazing thing for me in the sense that I can find some of these guests on my show that you already have vetted and put everything together for someone like myself. So I can tell you from the receiving end of what you do, it's greatly appreciated. And the professional value of your product is highly regarded by me. And I know other guests, other hosts as well. It's interesting because when I started my show a couple of years ago, I never imagined I'd be working with someone like yourself to put out content and digital content and programming, but it works really well. We work well with, having that opportunity. In terms of your situation, what do you consider the greatest challenge you've had with all these accomplishments? And I consider you a trailblazer because you are. Are you comfortable with the term trailblazer for yourself?
Oh yeah. No, I've called myself a pioneer throughout most of my life. Well, because, when I was one of the first women sports writers in the country, I made national television and I was on the front pages of the LA Times. And, I was known by every sports editor in America. And because, I wasn't the first, but I was among that very first wave. And, a lot of times people assume that you're not going to be any good because you're a woman. And so needless to say, I shot everybody's expectations way out of the water. And especially, when I went to start my PR agency, all of the other agencies that specialize in sports were run by men. And they saw me coming and they just discounted me right away. And of course, then I became one of their top competitors. And it was exciting because we were really playing in a big ballpark.
What do you think about the interplay between your background with sports and your current focus? Do you see that something that you still work with athletes, or have you intertwined it at all in terms of?
No, not really. The consistent thing that has been all across my career writing has been the core of what I've done, whether that's writing about sports figures, writing proposals, pitch letters, media kits, scripts, speaker sheets, whatever it is, books. It's all been writing. That's the base in my life. Now, sports, it doesn't have a big place in my life any longer.
I got you. That was like a starting point.
But it did get me started. I still get a little thrill when I see the Dodgers win the World Series. I mean, I can't not. But by the way, I co-hosted Dodger Dugout in my senior year of college, and so I still have a great fondness for sitting in the ballpark on a Sunday afternoon. For me, my joy today is being a messenger. I consider myself a divine messenger, because I'm not only delivering the message that I was being gifted to give, which is practical conscious creation, but I'm being here to be a conduit for other messengers, so that all together as a unit, we improve the world. That's it. That's really my mission. I'm here to make people's lives better, make the world a better place through whatever divine direction I'm given.
I know we talked a little before we started recording about consciousness and manifestation, and I wanted to add, because I know you're well versed in this yourself. If someone in our audience was for the first time trying to apply concepts that you're very comfortable with consciousness and creation, what would you suggest to someone in our audience if they have a hard time trying to understand what manifestation is about or the law of attraction? How would you guide them to start with?
Well, it's all about frequency. And our frequency is determined by the thoughts and the emotions that we put out into the world. If the lower frequencies are anger, frustration, disappointment, blame, all of those kinds of things, those are dense frequencies that don't elevate you. And when you are in higher frequencies of love and tolerance and acceptance and faith in the universe is supporting you, and kindness and sharing and willingness to share your gifts, when you're in those spaces, in those higher spaces, and taking choosing to be in that space, because it's a choice. It's a clear choice. If you're exuding those kinds of emotions and thoughts, then that's what you're going to attract back to you. The universe is going to bring you more to reinforce that. On the other hand, if you're in those low frequencies like anger and disappointment, and the world's treating like crap, well, the universe is just going to give you more to reinforce that. Bad people, distrust, dishonesty, all of those kinds of things. If you look at the world through a mirror of, I don't trust anybody, trust me, the universe is going to send you all kinds of untrustworthy people. So the simple answer is, and what my books are all about, is basically frequency management, managing your frequency so that you are in the higher realms and you're receiving things that are more in concert with where you want to spend your life. Financial success, friendships, relationships, kindness, compassion, support, health, all of those things. If you raise your frequency, you're going to experience way more of that than you are if you just stick around and wallowing in victimhood and self-pity.
So well said. I love the way that's been. That's how I feel too. I always use the analogy with my clients or with people I work with, that if you wake up in the morning and you feel like you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, and you get in your car and you order McDonald's to get coffee, and you notice you spilled the coffee on yourself, reprogram the script in your head and say, it's just a spill, nothing to worry about. I'm going to have a beautiful day ahead of me, and try to reprogram yourself so you attract amazing things ahead rather than a continuation of what could be considered a negative day.
Yeah, I mean, I am not immune to these problems myself.
Oh,
I
sure,
mean, we all are. And so I know what I am having and ratcheting myself up into a scene, an emotional, if I, or just depression, if I indulge myself in that, I know the next day is not going to be any fun. So I consciously think, all right, you're going to get yourself out of this. Go take a walk, go smell the roses. I have 300 roses around my house. Go get in the sunshine, go read a book, go to the movies, go talk to somebody you care about. Doing any of those things, or, if you have pets, if you like music, I mean, any of those things are going to raise your frequency. Shift, and then you're going to see a difference. But I know I'm responsible. And that's the mark of somebody who's consciously creating. You are responsible for everything that you attract and experience in your life. And that if it's not what you want, fix it.
What was your favorite part of writing The Art of Conscious Creation?
When it was done. The most challenging part for me was there's one chapter that has a ton of the science that shows that our emotions and our thoughts actually impact physically other things around the world, other people. The science shows that we are not contained within ourselves. And it's not a physical reaction. It is, what our thoughts and our emotions are implanting everywhere else around us. So that chapter was really hard to research. But the rest of the book pretty much wrote itself. There's 25 guiding universal principles that said, follow these things, and these will all raise your frequency. And that's the real simple answer. I mean, if you stay in concert with these elements, these guiding principles, then you're going to see a major shift. And then the last part of the book was sitting down and writing these beautiful visualizations of the world in healed ways. Health, hunger, food, worlds, nations and peoples getting along with each other. I mean, there's 17 different ones in different aspects, and I actually recorded them. And the book is now on Audible. The Art of Conscious Creation is now on Audible, but I actually pulled those out and I made CDs. And by the way, somebody wants a CD, they can reach out to me with all these 17 beautiful, actually, I think I made 20 for the CD, 20 beautiful visualizations that you could listen to, and you put them on your phone and just live in a space of what this world could be. Because manifestation, that visualization, that's the vibration you're putting out. So create a vibration that contributes to a better world. In our unsettling times in the past year with the pandemic, I know we've all gone through a lot
in terms of mindset shift and just working through things personally and having to deal with the COVID virus. And I just want to ask you, in terms of the things that you've experienced in your life, what did you take from the pandemic in terms for yourself with the things you regard most
well, the first thing that for me, most importantly, I was going to 30 conferences a year marketing SpeakerTunity. And it was exhausting and it was tiring. And I'm older than I look. Thank you very much. And so it was really wearing on my body. And the nice part about being home and being able to work from home was that I lost almost 40 pounds.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I still work incredibly hard. I'm trying to, long hours. But I do it now with a joy of being at home. I have a home that is my sanctuary, and that has been a good thing. The other thing is knowing that I can pivot. We changed our instead of emphasizing we were going to launch our SpeakerTunity cities regional directories. And at the time, who was going to buy a regional directory when there were no meetings going on? I mean, now the world has changed back to, virtual meetings. We had to think, well, what can we do in lieu of that? And so that's when we shifted and really focused on the radio podcast tours, injected life into them. And we're going to have our best year ever this year. Realized that since more people were sitting at home listening to radio shows and podcasts, this was a perfect time to promote that. So that has really expanded. And then the other thing was, it occurred to us that SpeakerTunity could be more than what we really had. And having the time to be at home and my home office and really being able to work with my team, we could expand it. And that's when we added so many of the new features at SpeakerTunity. It just became a real headquarters, or we're calling it the ultimate speakers toolbox. And doing that expansion, I never could have done all that had I been on the road and off the road and on the road and off the road. So to me, it's been a real blessing. On the other hand, I certainly have great empathy for those people who have lost people or who've had really financially, it's not been an easy financial situation for us. I mean, I've got 16 people on my team. And so I'm solely responsible for bringing in the money that's going to pay all those people. So thank you, God, for the US government and, their loans. That's been a big help. But it also made me grateful, incredibly grateful for the support of everybody around me who was willing to be patient until we could get the engine going. So
I'll ask you this. Someone in the audience right now, let's say someone by the fictitious name of Lisa, is listening to us, and she has a life dream of getting on podcasts and being her own speaker and presenter, but she's never written a book. She only has ideas, and she's been kind of in a rut. What recommendation would you have for her to get out there and get noticed?
Well, the first thing is I would get clear on what it is that she can offer. I mean, you really have to know what your mission and your message is. And once you know what your mission and your message is, then it's a matter of building the tools and the resources to get on these things, to make an offer, to get out and speak, to do podcasts. You don't want to get on a podcast and just tell your story. Mm-hmm. Because that's not enough. You need to, when you get on a podcast, you need to provide something, whether it's motivation, hope, and a solution, a product, a resource, a free item, something that's going to give that audience something that will enable them to move forward in their lives. You need to be the gate. You need to be the door opener for whoever is listening to you. You have to provide them a vision of where they can go. So get clear on your own vision. What is the product? What is the resource that you have to offer? You can't just say, well, I coach people. Well, who exactly do you coach? And you don't coach everybody. You coach a limited, very specific audience of people, whether it's middle-aged women that are transitioning from a corporate world into the business world, or whether it's young people who are stuck at home trying to get out of their parents' home and they're trying to rebuild their lives. Find your audience, find your tribe, and figure out what that tribe needs. And even ask around. If you know what your tribe is, say to them, What's giving you a hard time? What do you need help with? Where are you going? And then listen for the answers. And some of those answers should come to you intuitively if you get quiet and listen. But, find out what it is that they need and then fashion it, create it. Put a wonderful creative name to it and brand it. And now once you've got that, now you are golden to go everywhere. So that would be my recommendation.
If you were in an elevator, one of these kind of questions, if you're in an elevator and the elevator gets stuck and you're in the elevator with another person and they ask you, what's the most amazing thing that you've done in your life that no one knows? What would that be?
That no one knows.
I mean, you have a lot of amazing things
I
already.
think being a sports writer was really pretty cool.
Okay.
I think it's having been a teacher, essentially. Having brought along so many young people who've been in my worked for me, have been on my team, help them grow, help them learn their skills that have helped them become who they are, invested my heart and soul into giving them the self-confidence and the wherewithal to grow into really wonderful human beings. That to me is that's the gift that that this lifetime has given me.
Can you tell us a little about Practice Conscious Creation in terms of what prompted you to create that book as compared to the sequel to, I guess, your first book, or how they?
Well, Practical Conscious Creation I did not set out to create. I was writing a newsletter from my conscious creation clientele, people who'd come and been interested in what I was doing. And so I was writing these once every other week, little tiny articles on how just go about your daily life and raise your personal frequency, changing this thought, changing this behavior, doing this while you're doing that. One of my favorites is how to be positive with a negative energy spouse. The universe has my back. It's not a mistake. It's not an accident. It's not a disaster. It's a universal redirect. It's all in changing your perspective. And so I wrote 70 of these little articles and then 70 little tiny tips. And I had a publisher say to me, we think that might be a really good book. And so I said, I would love to turn this into a book. So I did, and they published it. And so I was really thrilled. It became my second book, and that's the one that was the award winner. It's light, it's fun, it's not heavy. It's just got these 70 little articles and 70 little tips that are going to elevate your thinking and your emotions and make you feel happy and more creative and more consciously creative. So it just reorients your thinking about everything you do in life.
Where do you see yourself going with SpeakerTunity and with conscious media relations going forward in the future, post-COVID, and when the pandemic slows down and things reopen? Like, where do you see your focus going with that?
Well, conscious media relations is just going to continue to grow. We continue. I mean, the one thing about this pandemic period is that all those people who said, I'm one day going to write my book, they all did it. They had nothing else to do. So now they're all coming to the marketplace and we're having a fun time taking care of it. So that's going to continue to grow. SpeakerTunity, I'm really excited about. We are not only launching SpeakerTunity cities, regional directories, we're launching the something called SpeakerTunity Specialties in June, which will give speakers an ability to buy contacts for all the meetings, venues, and association in their niche, just in their special niche, all across North America or in one of 5 major regions in US and Canada. And so speakers need a fast and easy way to get booked. And hey, we're going to be it. So once we launch that in April, we really think there's going to be an explosion. We're going to continue growing SpeakerTunity with more assets, more resources. We're literally adding a product a month. And we believe that we're going to be the place, the clearinghouse where everybody comes if they need their speaker stuff. So we feel we're like on the cutting edge, just on the about to spring into a huge new level. And we're really excited about that. And I'm excited. I brought in a couple other team members so that they are doing some of the things that I was doing, so that I can be free to create and really set up great partnerships with big organizations. And so, I have big plans for where we're going, but the other big plan I have for myself, as soon as this pandemic opens up, to go away on an international vacation. I am ready to go.
I understand that. Understand 100%, 100%. Where do you see your greatest challenge with expanding with SpeakerTunity going forward? Like, what do you think is going to be one of the challenges in this post-pandemic era that we're looking at?
Just getting the word out to enough people to know about what we're doing, because speakers, when they find out about it, they're really excited, but most of the time they just don't know about it. So it's getting in front of them in various different ways, whether it's speaking, podcasts, webinars, internet, advertising, social media, partnerships with other organizations, joint venture partnerships, national organizations we'd like to tie up with, who we'd like them to be, we want to be a favored a vendor for all of their members and things like that. I mean, there's just a lot of things that we're in the process of developing that hopefully will hit a tipping point and start taking off themselves, as opposed to me having to, constantly drive it.
I was going to tell you, as you just said that, I'll just tell you this intuitively. I was picking up when you said social media. I could see a lot of expansion with social media with SpeakerTunity, or social media for you going out forward in the next year or so. So that's one thing I'm picking up just to share with you. As you said that, I see a lot of growth in that area as one thing you're going to grow with. If you were to look back on the last 10 years of your life and you see the trends of the way things have been going, do you think the trends with the new age movement are going to continue into the 2020s? Or do you think there's going to be some changes in terms of what people are interested in wanting to know about? Because I know when you book people, you kind of get an idea of the pulse to produce these people, to promote the speakers that come to you. Like, do you think there will be a change in the type of ideas that people are going to look at as a market for speakers in the future?
I think what's going to happen, I think what's already happening, is that it won't be the new age anymore. It will be
mainstream,
much more of a way that a larger segment of our society lives. These skills, these gifts, this attitude of oneness and peace, and celebrate your brother. I mean, certainly we live in a very diverse world, and there are some people that are never going to get the picture. But there is a very, very substantial growing number of people who are coming through the door, starting with meditation and stress release. And all of a sudden, this whole world is opening up to them. And what was at the one point, the mystical, is now the mainstream. And that's going to happen more and more and more and more. And I think we're going to see a shift. I think also, when you see more women leaders, having a female vice president doesn't hurt. When you see more women at the helm, those receptive, intuitive, female-oriented, skills and approach are going to start having a greater impact. Now, I'm a big believer in, both men and women, and us being androgynous creatures, so that we get comfortable with both our feminine and masculine sides. But I do believe that, a woman's, we women are collaborators. Men are hierarchical. And that is true for the language we speak. There's a wonderful book about, that's called by Deborah Teneman, called You Just Don't Understand. And it's all about how women communicate and men communicate and how we see the world. And so women as collaborators and team builders, with them rising to higher levels, you're going to see much more of this kind of an influence
We need
and
that.
the acceptance of intuitive skills and, all these other kinds of things.
Could you imagine our world in diplomacy if women ran things? I know there's always been some story. I believe that personally. I think if we had more female leadership internationally and locally within our country, that we wouldn't have as many conflicts and as many wars. And I think a lot of things would be negotiated and handled differently.
I agree with you.
100%.
And with the exception of Margaret Thatcher, most of the women politicians at the highest levels have been consensus builders.
Which is what we need in this world. We need so much more consensus comparatively to everything else with solving our problems. Because like global warming, for example, if we had more consensus building on that, we wouldn't have so many problems.
Yeah, exactly.
In that. Looking at your career, and you've done a lot of different things, what would be your favorite thing that you would highlight on an epitaph for yourself?
That she followed God's breadcrumbs, that she listened to the divine inspiration rather than what society said, and she followed her path.
I love that. I just want to know this, a couple more questions I have before we wind up our interview. If you were to look at everything that you've done in relation to promoting speakers and looking at different trends, do you think podcasting will continue to be one of the prominent areas of development for speakers to get promoted on, or do you think other media will take its place in the future?
Well, I don't have a crystal ball. So I don't know what's coming up. I still love my iPod, but nobody else does. And so you really can't tell where the technology is going to go. But I do believe that podcasting / video casting, like we're doing right here, is only going to continue to increase. There's over 1 million podcasts today. And that number is just going to continue to go up because now there's a podcast for just about anything. And while you have big swaths of certain topics, there are lots of niche ones too that are just getting started. So I think that, yes, I do not see any lessening in this. Now, whether it goes to new technologies and becomes, more expanded, that may very well be the case. But I do think that this medium is one that's here to stay for at least 10 years.
We mentioned different healing modalities earlier, and I want to ask you, like for me, I meditate a lot. I also meditate with crystals like rose quartz, and I believe in the frequency of different stones. And I want to ask you, what's one of your favorite healing modalities that you turn to when you have quiet moments? And I know you don't have many quiet moments, but when you do have a quiet moment, and why?
Oh, well, I love both just being in nature. That to me is the most. I have a beautiful backyard with running water, fountains, and just hearing that water calms me down and brings me to a place of peace. And so sitting in a sunlit backyard or in the forest or somewhere being in nature is my single most therapeutic form of meditation in that sense. For me also, I think, we were just chatting before we got on here. I also am at one point I was the leading seller of mineral spheres and natural mineral marbles in the world. And so I have a collection of 1,000 mineral spheres. And so for me, I love to do a little tour of my collection. And, while I don't feel energy, like the young man that's been with me for 16 years is my right hand, he can feel the energy. I don't feel the energy, but I know that it's influenced my life. I know that it's here and opened me up and helps me live a life that is somehow contributory to the world. So
I find that gemstones help me get balanced. It's like having your cup of joe, cup of coffee. But for me, it's I'm sensitive to the energy. So I love having the crystals around me, like my rose quartz or the sphere behind me that you see that's rose quartz and those kind of things. I just love having those opportunities of understanding gemstones. So that's great that you have that history. If you were a spirit animal, and I ask this regularly on my show, so I'm just curious. If you were a spirit animal, which spirit animal would you be and why? And I'll go first to give you an example. I always say owl because I have two parrots. I love birds, but I also look at wisdom as something I quest for as an attorney and as a intuitive psychic medium. And I believe looking at things from like the 180 above everything, just seeing it all, taking it all, the gestalt. So that's why I like consider my spirit animal the owl.
Well, I wouldn't have said this, but I would, it's coming to me that I should say eagle. That I do fly high, that I have a big vision, and that I can spread my wings and protect others. That's what I see in myself.
That's beautiful. And it sounds like you've been doing that through everything.
I like to think so.
I want to thank you for coming on. Before I end the show or our interview, I just want to make sure if our audience wants to contact you, and I know you have 3 websites, I was going to see if you could just, share your contact information with us so that our audience knows where to get a hold of you, because I know you have a lot of information that could benefit a lot of people.
So the best place to reach me is Jackie@SpeakerTunity.com. That's easy if you want to contact me directly. Now, if you want to explore some of the things that we've just been talking about, you can go to ConsciousMediaRelations.com. You can go to SpeakerTunity.com. And you can go to JackieLapin.com. JackieLapin.com is where the books and conscious creation stuff is. SpeakerTunity is where all the speaker and leader resources are. And Conscious Media Relations is where you'll find more information about our radio podcast tours.
Great. Jackie, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure. It's so exciting to have this interview today, to offer this to our audience. And I know that you have amazing things coming up and continuing to occur. And I always would love to have you come back on with an open platform. Should you have news that you want to share with our audience, I'd love to have you as a part, and you're always welcome to come back.
Well, thank you, sweetheart. And I want to make extend an invitation to your community as well. We have a Facebook group. It's called Changemaker Collaboration Circle. And so if anybody wants to come and join that, just come over to Facebook and click on to Changemaker Collaboration Circle, and we would embrace you. It's an opportunity for you to promote whatever it is that you're doing. If you're a change maker in the world, we want to give you that space to do that.
I will put that as part of our program notes, and I'll promote it on our social media so that our audience can benefit from that. I love offering resources to our audience, and that's why I wanted to have you on today and just really share your notable individual experiences so that our audience could learn from what you have to offer.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
It's been a joy. Thank you, Jason.
Appreciate it. I'm going to just mute you for a second when I do the outro real quick, and then I'll be done. Oops. Oh, did that by accident. What did I just do here? We are done with the interview, but somehow I accidentally hit your, oh, there we go. That's getting edited out. I just want to thank Jackie for coming on the show today. Having notable individuals that have so much to offer our audience, I think, is so important in these times that we are living in at this moment. SpeakerTunity is definitely something to check out. Jackie's information is provided in the show notes. And I just want everyone to pay attention to the importance of what Jackie and I talked about today, which is utilizing your experiences. And if you have a dream and you have a goal, make that happen, manifest it, put it into action. And there are resources out there more than we can imagine that are at our fingertips in our digital age. So definitely check out Jackie's information, SpeakerTunity.com, ConsciousMediaRelations.com, and JackieLapin.com. And I will promote the Changemaker Collaboration Circle on Facebook. And until next time, I appreciate you coming into the show, and I appreciate our audience tuning into this information. And I think it's going to be great to learn how to get booked, get leads and strategies with SpeakerTunity, and looking at the practical aspects of the art of conscious creation, as well as understanding Jackie's background and history and what she's made. It's just such a great story to share with each of you. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, stay positive, because when you're positive, anything's possible.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Social Psychic Radio Show. Don't forget to join us for another episode next time. If you enjoyed the show, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give us a review on iTunes. You can also check us out on Facebook, and don't forget to visit the Social Psychic YouTube channel. Until next time, it's a big world out there. Keep an open mind, embrace your paradigms, and know that the universe is always yours to explore.